Right, I'm sorry about that. I don't know what the problem was there. I hopefully have fixed it. I don't know. Something was obviously using lots of cycles on the computer. Just tell me that I'm not breaking up now that I am talking live, if you would, and then I will continue. Anyway, good morning. Welcome to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training. I'm not sure why I seem to have yeah, I can see that there's an indicator telling me that I've got a poor connection to the server. So obviously that has affected the video playback there, but for some reason not the audio. Anyway, here we go. So yeah, Kevin Williams here from Survival Skills. It's my weekly show, twice weekly show, 11s. It's 552. It's Wednesday, the 6th of August. And we have a bunch of stories today. Suffolk police, they are seeking a rider who hit 158 miles per hour on one of their roads. A Shrewsbury rider who posted some viral videos of him pulling stunts, which he claimed were in Mexico. He's been banned. A drunk backpacker from the UK who rather tragically has killed a pedestrian and seriously injured her own passenger whilst riding under the influence on an e-scooter in Australia, has been denied bail on the grounds that she might actually skip it. Staff police, they're looking for the driver and the passengers of a car who left in a taxi after a collision that seriously injured a rider in the pillion. And then we move on to some industry news. Harley-Davidson, they have named another CEO. Piaggio, their sales and profits, they've plunged in the first half of 2025. KTM have restarted limited production, and we'll look at what that might mean. And we'll also have a look at the REV Force two-stroke prototype and ask whether, in fact, that's a revolution or evolution. And then finally, in depth today, something that popped up in one of the comments, the police system of motorcycle control, information, position, speed, gear, acceleration. You probably know it if you have done any advanced riding. I'll have a look today at some of its limitations and start with thinking about how we can extend it rather more flexibly and why it might have originated in the first place. So that's what we've got today. Do make sure that you grab yourself a brew as you stay with me for the next 30 odd minutes as I run through my news stories, which I forgot to put up in the banner because I was worrying about why the presentation was intermittent. Anyway, never mind. Let's crack on. Now, the first thing, as always, is this point is to remind you that the e-course, the latest edition of the e-course is just about now. I'm flickering around, my head's moving around in big jerks. The Right, I don't understand why that's gone all there. That's what we're supposed to be looking at. Right, the e-course, the August e-course is starting on Friday. So if you are interested in signing up for that, I have some excellent feedback from one of the most recent attendees. It's £79 at the moment, 8 weeks. It doesn't just give you the usual advanced riding, but it does, as my feedback has told me, is it makes you think about what you're doing. So yeah, if you can do it, that's one thing. But if you can think about why you're doing it, that's something completely different. And that's what the e-course really focuses on. But it also gives you some highly practical exercises to go and try out on the road too. So if you want to sign up for that, there it is. It's you can follow the e-course, as I say, over a period of 8 weeks, and the link will take you straight there to the sign up page. Next one, as I say, starts Friday. So if you are interested in that, do go and join up. I'll be checking in with everybody who has signed up and getting them up and running on Friday. Now, the weather. Monday, you probably noticed Storm Floris blew through the country. It brought some highly unseasonable weather to the north of the UK in particular. It's pretty breezy down in London. The Met Office actually recorded a gust of 134 miles per hour at the summit of Cairngorm. Wick Airport recorded a gust of 82 miles per hour. Meanwhile, Tropical Storm Dexter is headed eastwards across the Atlantic. Now, as this decays over the next few days, it is likely to help build a ridge of high pressure over the UK during the weekend, which could draw some seriously warm air up across southern and eastern areas next week. But for today, it's a settled day, mainly dry, sunny, just the odd light shower in the far north of Scotland. It will turn hazy, however, from the west during the afternoon. Temperatures will range from the mid-teens in the far north to the mid-20s in the London area. Outbreaks of rain in the far northwest will start to occur during the late evening. Now, Thursday sees the rain associated with a weak frontal system fading away. It will spread across from western parts down towards the southern parts of England and East Anglia, where it will be cloudy for much of the day. Now, the rest of the country behind that front will see a breezy but relatively fine day with more sunshine, particularly in the north. Now, Friday looks largely sunny for most, just the odd shower in the north. There'll be a band of rain reaching the northwest in the evening. Saturday looks to be pretty good for riding, actually. Largely sunny and dry, just a few showers in northern areas, where it will be a bit on the windy side. Right, and so to the news. Now, the Suffolk police, they have sent a notice of intended prosecution to the address of the registered owner of a motorcycle, wasn't identified in the reports, that was clocked at 158 miles per hour on the A14 last week. It's apparently the highest speed that Suffolk police have ever recorded, and the force said the rider would be summoned to appear in court as soon as they responded. Meanwhile, a rider from Shrewsbury who posted online videos of him pulling stunts and speeding whilst pretending they were from Mexico. He was identified by West Mercia police as 22-year-old Benjamin Males. He was arrested. He's been charged with 5 counts of dangerous driving. His video, which was posted on Instagram in April, I think I mentioned it at the time, showed him performing wheelies and riding at speed. Now, it racked up more than 1 million views by the time the police discovered it. Now, he appeared in front of the magistrates at Telford on Wednesday last week, and he pleaded guilty to all 5 counts, obviously, given up the idea that he was actually in Mexico at the time. He was disqualified from driving for 18 months. He's been ordered to complete 240 hours of unpaid work, issued a rehabilitation order, and fined £199, and he will have to pass an extended driving test to regain his license. Of course, if he's monetized his channel, he may well make that £199 back in just a few minutes. Right, okay, so don't forget, if you do enjoy these shows, please do subscribe and like. The buttons are just down below. Click the like button, click the subscribe button, helps everybody find the channel, or simply tell your buddies the old-fashioned way. And if you want to catch up with my content, which is always available free on my Facebook page and my Coffee page, you can get it delivered direct to your email inbox once a week via my Substack newsletter. So that's the QR code that will take you there. Right, okay. Now, on with the news. Well, sadly, a British backpacker could face up to 20 years in prison in Australia after being charged with causing death by dangerous driving whilst under the influence in an e-scooter crash. Alicia Kemp, 24, collided with Than Phan, 51, in Perth on the 31st of May. Phan, who, father of two, underwent surgery for brain swelling but sadly died 2 days later. Police said CCTV footage captured Miss Kent inexplicably dangerously riding, and she was found to have a blood alcohol level more than 3 times the legal limit after the crash, in which she was reported to have careered into Phan's back whilst riding the e-scooter at 25 kilometers per hour. Now, Miss Famp faces an additional charge of dangerous driving under the influence for injuries suffered by her friend, who was riding passenger on the e-scooter. Now, she had apparently been evicted from the bar due to intoxication before the crash, which is why that she was being taken home on the scooter. The friend, who was unnamed, 26, also suffered injuries in the crash, including a fractured skull and a broken nose. Kemp was reportedly visiting Western Australia on a 4-month working holiday visa and had been celebrating with friends before the incident. The fatal crash happened last month, as I say. She was denied bail when she appeared at the magistrate's court last week, though, because the magistrate ruled that she posed a significant flight risk. She hasn't entered a formal plea on the charge yet, and she's been remanded in custody, and she'll be back in front of the court on August the 11th. Now, Mr. Phan is believed to be the first pedestrian to die in an e-scooter incident in Western Australia, and the crash appears to have kick-started a crackdown on these scooters by police and other authorities. The police commissioner, Cole Blanche, said he would like to see e-scooters banned from all Western Australia footpaths. And the Deputy Lord Mayor announced that the scooter providers had been ordered to suspend their operations, presumably use a sort of similar rental scheme as they have here in the UK, and to collect them from Perth streets. Now, some neighbouring administrations have also followed suit, and the Deputy Premier of Western Australia has said that further education campaigns and compliance measures are being considered. And a terrible incident in Ghana this time. 3 people have died following a head-on collision between 2 motorcycles in the Amansi district of Ghana. The crash, which was reported to have taken place at high speed, caused both bikes to explode in flames. 3 of the 4 men on the 2 bikes died instantly, and they were burned beyond recognition in what was described as an inferno. Locals tried to help, but were beaten back by the intensity of the flames. And by the time emergency services from the Ghana Police Service and the Ghana National Fire Service arrived, the damage had already been done. The 3 victims out of the 4, none of them have been identified yet, but early reports suggest that they were likely residents of the surrounding communities. Now, following a serious collision involving a silver Vauxhall Vectra and a motorcycle, Staffordshire police are searching for the driver and a number of female occupants of the car after they left the scene in a taxi. The rider and the pillion passenger were seriously injured in the incident that happened in the Longston area at 6:35 on Wednesday, June the 4th. Another man was also hospitalised, but the other occupants left in a blue taxi. It collected them close to a pub called the Black Horse, and it took them to address in Hanley, Stoke-on-Trent. So police predictably are asking for anybody with information or dashcam or CCTV footage that might be of use. Right. Okay. So moving on to some industry news. The first story is that Artie Stars is going to take over as the next president and CEO of Harley Davidson after Jochen Zeitz, who has led the company since 2020, steps down on October the 1st. Zeitz will then serve as a senior advisor until February 2026 to ensure a smooth leadership transition. Now, under Zeitz, Harley-Davidson executed a strategic plan which was aimed at streamlining operations, improving margins, expanding premium product lines, and reinforcing brand desirability. But market analysts would say that the results have been disappointing, to say the least. Motorcycle sales are down by a quarter. The company, of course, has been hit by tariff uncertainties, and there has been pressure from investors for leadership changes. Now, dealers themselves voiced concerns under Zeitz's leadership around this emphasis on high-end machines at the expense of the entry-level machines. Starr's appointment is seen as an effort to restore profitability and engagement across Harley's dealer network. Now, Zeitz came from outside the Harley family. He was the former CEO of Puma, and he replaced Matt Levertich, who was actually a long-time Harley executive. Many felt that Harley Davidson had lost direction under Zeitz's leadership. And the same questions are actually likely to be raised by the appointment of Stars, because he moves from a company called Topgolf International, and he previously was the global CEO of Pizza Hut. So his skill set is not in motorcycling. But the board believes that what he does know about brand building and scaling consumer experiences will help Harley attract younger riders, will rebuild dealer confidence, and will rebuild longer term growth. We'll see. There are rumors that Harley Davidson are about to introduce a new machine at a price point of, they say, under $6,000. As soon as I know more about that, I will let you know. Now, Piaggio is another company which is facing declining sales. It's just announced its results for the first half of 2025, and they sold 238,400 vehicles between January and June this year, and that's down from 270,100 in the same period of 2024. Earnings before interest and taxes and all that sort of thing, they fell 15.3% year on year to 147.1 million euros. Net profits were down 42% to 30 million euros. That's about $34 million. I'll leave it to you to work out what it is in pounds. But they say it's all due to a contracting market for motor vehicles. In a historical moment like this, with international trade disputes and increased geopolitical tensions, being able to remain flexible, controlling liquidity and financial management is essential, said CEO Michel Colaninno in a statement. But at least Piaggio returned a profit, as did Yamaha, who also experienced a decline in both revenue and profits due to lower unit sales of motorcycles, personal watercraft, and golf carts. They also cited increases in R&D expenses, which could just possibly point to the work they're doing on alternative fuels. Labour costs went up, and so did other costs, whatever they might be. They also they blamed the reduced unit sales on deteriorating market conditions. So very much the same as Piaggio have been saying there. They also made downward forecasts to their revenue and other profit predictions, which they provide investors. And they have cited factors like the trade tariffs being imposed by the United States, but also higher automobile taxes in Indonesia. Now, another company we've heard a lot of over the last 8 months or so is KTM, and they quietly returned to production at their main factory in Mattinghofen in Austria last week. But interestingly, they say that those production lines will be working to build their off-road motocross and enduro models first, and then after that, the next production lines to restart will be the 690 machines based on the LC4 platform. Now, the off-road motorcycles that KTM built were one of the few bright spots for KTM sales-wise. They were still selling well right up until KTM went into shutdown in December. And so my guess is that these probably represent a path to some positive income. My guess is also that the 690s, being single cylinders, are relatively inexpensive and require the least resources to build. Now, this could be crucial because you may recall the stories about the difficulties KTM have had in re-establishing their supply chains. Their previous restart ground to a halt because their in-factory stocks ran out. And again, my guess is that suppliers probably weren't too happy at having to deliver parts on credit when they'd already taken a 70% hit on what they were owed for delivering parts to KTM before they shut down. I suspect KTM may well be having to pay up front for some of their parts. Or at least source some alternatives. As for the bigger machines, KTM, of course, still have a huge overstock to clear out. They had 2 years worth of production back at the end of last year. That's production, not 2 years worth of sales. And with their sales down, that could take a very, very long time for them to clear that excess stock. So despite their sort of enthusiastic reports in the media suggesting that everything's hunky-dory and that this is a return to 5 days a week working on the production lines, it's clearly nothing like a full restart. I believe KTM have 4 production lines at Mattinghof, and I'd be very surprised if all of them were working to anything like capacity at the moment. Given the fall in demand that other manufacturers are experiencing, I think this unlikely at best that KTM are going to return to anything like the levels of production that put them into crisis. So it'll be very interesting indeed to see where Bajaj steer them after the Indian manufacturer took control and where they will aim their products in the future. Now, over the years, I've seen plenty of engines of the future chain. There was the Norton Wolf stepped piston design. That was the creation of Bernard Hooper while he was chief engineer of Norton Villiers Limited. That was back in the late 60s, early 70s, if I remember right. That was stillborn due to lack of funds as that company collapsed. There was the Rotary, of course, from Norton, and there was an Aprilia scooter that you may remember long ago was built around a direct injected 2-stroke based on work by the Australian Orbital Engine Corporation. Now, back in 1999, when Aprilia were putting the scooter out on the market, they said that the technology could deliver higher specific power than any 4-stroke in the class. That's pretty common to 2-strokes, of course, but unlike conventional 2-strokes, they would use less fuel and they would create less pollution. And they said this particular machine would be easily able to meet the then current Euro 1 emission regulations for motorcycles. Now, offshore, Yamaha use much the same technology in outboard engines. So I confess to no great surprise at the news from Alpha Otto Technologies, who claim that their new REV Force 2-stroke twin is a reimagining the internal combustion engine for a cleaner, more efficient and fuel flexible future. They say their bold innovation combines high power density with dramatically reduced emissions. But the unique bit is that it's built, they say, to run not only on today's fuel, i.e. petrol, but also tomorrow's clean alternatives like hydrogen and ammonia. And they say this isn't just about engines, it's about impact. It's about making a difference for future generations and meeting the world's growing energy demands without compromise. Okay, so as always, they say that the engine has fewer moving parts and is part of a transition to a cleaner global future. Now you can have a look at their video here. It's 3 minutes long. Now, whatever engine uses petrol, of course, or even hydrogen, is still going to produce some tailpipe emissions. If it's petrol, of course, it will produce CO2. Any other CO2 based fuel as well, ethanol or butanol, I've seen promoted recently as a new clean fuel, they will all produce CO2 at the tailpipe. Now, the video itself doesn't actually say much about the engine, and the first 2 minutes actually read simply as a plea to keep burning gasoline. What we do know is that the motor uses a lean burn technology, something that, as I say, isn't exactly new. Also based on forced induction, which is presumably a supercharger since there appears to be a belt drive on the side of it, and disc valves, which of course again are many decades old. And it uses the dry sump similarly to the direct injection technology engines. So does it work? Well, Alpha Otto, they claim their REV Force motor produces 173 horsepower, 127 kilowatts. Although since they give no word on what the capacity of the motor is, it's hard to see just how efficient that actually is. They do say it weighs just 48 kilos, which is 106 pounds. Now, for reference, the Suzuki RGV 500 Grand Prix bike, the last incarnation of the sort of two-stroke MotoGP racers, that produced around 185 horsepower, possibly up to 200 according to some claims. So it's kind of ballpark for a bike like that. That was obviously a 500cc. I can't find a weight for the race engine, but the earlier 500cc square 4 in the RG 500 road bike weighed about 59 kilos. So a bit heavier, but obviously it would also come with presumably alternator attached. So maybe not quite the revolution claimed, maybe more of an evolution. As for ammonia as a fuel, well, we've talked about that before. Highly corrosive. You really don't want to be handling ammonia. Spillage or something like that could be quite nasty. It's highly toxic, and the fumes are not corrosive to the lungs, and it will kill you. So not so good for you. Hydrogen, yeah, okay, we know that. I've talked about hydrogen a lot as well. One of the problems with hydrogen is the need for huge storage tanks. So where's that going to leave us? Well, I don't really know, but interesting rather than revolutionary, I'd say. Okay, on to our final item for today, and that is the in-depth part of the show. And what I'm going to talk about today, this cropped up in comments to one of my posts, and it's the police roadcraft system, the motorcycle system of police control. Or police system motorcycle control, more to get the title correct. Most people know it as IPSJA, information position speed gear acceleration. Now I'll be honest, I think most people who've read my writing know this. I'm not a great fan of the system of motorcycle control, but I'm not the only one. In one of the comments on that post, Alan said it's interesting that you say about not being a fan of the IPSJA system, and I, having ridden to that standard with ROSPA, tend to find it convoluted and counterintuitive. He said, I redesigned IPSJA for myself to observe, anticipate, act. And he said, basically, for me, the prioritization of hazards is fairly intuitive. The closer, the more danger is higher priority. And he said, and then basically salt to taste. Now, I first met the information position speed gear acceleration in the old Blue Book days. I got that fairly early on in my riding career, and I did find the book very useful at that point because I was pretty much a novice, not very experienced, and I picked up anything I could find and read it voraciously to try to add to my background knowledge. Now, the interesting thing about the police system as it was laid out in the Blue Book was it was accompanied by diagrams showing how to use it to make left and right turns off a major road into a minor road. Now, since you actually know exactly where you're going, it is actually very, very easy to apply the system to a major to minor turn. The information stage, you look around you, you see where the turning is, you figure out what vehicles are in your vicinity, how they might arrive towards you, how they might follow you, and you decide what you're going to do to make that position, the change into that new road. And one of the things you're obviously going to do is signal as required, which could be use of an indicator, it could be use of the brake light, and it could be a change of position, which also delivers some information to the person that's watching us. And it could be, of course, the old-fashioned arm signal, which that book used to talk about. Now, having given some information to other road users about what you're going to do in a moment's time, then you give them a moment to take it into on board, to understand it and process it for themselves, and then you change position. That's the P part of IPSJA. You move to the appropriate position in the lane. And of course, if you were going to turn right, that would be out towards the center of the road, generally speaking. If you're going to turn left, maybe you'd keep a bit closer to the left-hand side of the lane. And then, having got into position, you adjust your speed. That would usually require that you use the brakes, but not necessarily. You might be just rolling off the throttle, but remember that signal to vehicles behind you. If you're rolling the throttle, they might not realize you're decelerating for quite some while. Then you move to the gear stage, and as you slow, you use the gears to match your steadily reducing speed. And then finally, the bit that the IPSJA system doesn't talk about is that you make your maneuver. You actually make the turn, and then on the far side of it, you would accelerate. Having turned, you would pick up speed again. Now, here's the interesting point. This is seen as an advanced riding system. If you've done anything with the IAM, ROSPA, most rider trainers, you'll know that they base everything on IPSJA. But it's actually really closely related to the OSM PSL system that's taught to learners. The observation, signal, maneuver into position, speed, lifesaver look. That's taught to motorcyclists. There's a very, very similar system which uses information mirror signal maneuver, PSL. That's taught to drivers. So if you've never actually been on the receiving end of the sort of basic training at CBT or direct access level, that is the system that's taught. And I can tell you, having worked with both, they are very, very similar. There isn't a huge difference between them. Now, both systems, for that reason, can easily be extended to other maneuvers at intersections. If you are approaching, for example, a main road on the minor road and you want to turn out at the end of it, then again, you just run through that system. You take information, you look to see where the junction is, what the road layout is in front of you, what other vehicles are around you may impact you if you when you make your maneuver, and you deliver signals to other people as required. And then again, you position into the most appropriate place to make your turn. Left hand side of the lane to turn left, right hand side of the lane to turn right. You would then, once you are in the position, you slow down, and as you are slowing down, you will of course need to reduce your gear position, go down through the gearbox, gear by gear usually, or you could shift in a block, doesn't really matter. It's there for you to choose. And then you come to the end of the road where you'd either stop and look and wait for a gap, or you would look, see there's a gap, and you'd go. And then you'd apply acceleration again once you're around the turn and pick up speed to match the speed on the road you just turned out onto. That's easy enough again. And again, once again, you can see that you could adapt it very simply for the approach to a roundabout and to get into the appropriate lane, to negotiate a roundabout if there are multi lanes, or just right and left if you are going left or right, well, right or left at a roundabout. You could use it to cope with a red traffic signal as well. Again, you would take that information and you would then give your signal through your brake light as you change speed and change gear. And then if the lights change before you get there, you could accelerate straight through again. So it works for many, many different situations. A parked car is another example. You could easily adapt both systems to deal with a parked car. Now, beyond that, how does it work? Well, I'd say it sort of works for overtakes, but I've always been very uncomfortable when it gets applied for corners, because I think corners demand far more flexibility than this stepwise system allows you to apply to a bend. And we'll be talking about that in another episode. So where did information, position, speed, gear? I've got that all wrong, haven't I? Information, speed, position, gear. No, I've written it down wrong. Oh, IPSGER, information, position, speed, gear, acceleration. I've written my notes wrong here. Where did it come from? Well, it obviously came from police rider training, driver training. But why was it developed in the first place? Well, my theory on this, because you won't find it explained anywhere, is that it was actually used for training. And it was used as a training tool to assess how riders were performing. The key point about IPSGER is that the 4 final components, position, speed, gear, and acceleration, are all outputs from the system. You take in your information, you process it, and then you assess what you're going to actually do to deal with the situation in front of you appropriately, and then you go ahead and you make those changes to your position, your speed, your gear, and accelerate again, clear on the other side if you want to. So these are outputs from a system, and they are the choices that we have already made when we have taken in and processed information. And those actually are the first 2 stages of any system. We absorb information, we then process it and decide what we're going to do with it, and then we use it to create the outputs where we actually go ahead and do it. So that is actually the 3 stages of the system. So all those position, speed, gear, acceleration, they're outputs. And that means they are easily measured, because it's easy to see how a rider is setting up for any specific hazard. We've just talked about the left and right turns. We can see if the rider is adjusting their position. We can see if the rider is adjusting their speed. We can watch their foot on the gear shift and see if they're changing gear. We also see their response when they accelerate, whether they're in the right gear or not. So those outputs are very easy to see. It's exactly what I would do with a CBT trainee, teaching them to do left or right turns. So it really isn't actually all that advanced. It's simply a measurement system. And if you are using a sort of tick list assessment to see if everything was done right, then the PSGA approach makes perfect sense. Now, what it doesn't do is give you any understanding of why the rider under assessment made the decisions they did. Now, at CBT level, it doesn't really matter, because all a CBT instructor is trying to do is get the rider to understand the absolute basics. And as I've sort of explained on numerous occasions, really all the aim of CBT is just to ensure that the rider doesn't kill themselves as soon as they ride out the gate on their own bike. But at advanced level, we actually want to start interrogating people and trying to understand why they are making specific decisions. And here, the tick list responses to this system aren't a great deal of use. And in fact, really, we have to get off the bike and actually ask them, why did you do what you did? What were you thinking? What did you see? Why did you do? Why was that your choice? So yeah, is the police system particularly advanced? Well, I'll be honest, I don't think it particularly is. I think it basically is just using what we're doing at CBT, but hopefully with a higher level of interpretation as we move through the developmental stages from basic training through the sort of intermediate test pass training up to advanced level. Anyway, next week, I'm going to break into the system, and we'll be talking about how it does consist of these 3 stages: the search for information, the middle stage where we assess and evaluate that information to decide what we're going to do next, and then finally those actual changes, how we make them on the road. And I'll break that down into 3 particular shows. So that is it for today. Remember, if before I go, we have the wide range of books on coffee, where you can look to see what I have for sale. If you pop over there, you can support me by buying me a cup or two, which is always appreciated. You can become weekly, a once-off supporter or monthly subscriber. And if you want to find out what I've got over there on my archive site, and where the books are, ebooks on sale, just head over to this coffee page by following the QR code. Right, that is it for today. Thank you very much indeed for watching once again. Kevin, I thought he might pop in with something. He says one significant difference: DVSA method encourages braking, changing down together. Roadcraft encourages adjusting speed before gear selection. I don't actually agree. It would depend on the situation. It will depend on the instructor that you've got. The reason that learners are taught to sequentially shift rather than block shift is simply it's far more difficult to get it wrong. I will tell you one day the story about the impromptu wheelie I pulled on my GSXR, the 115 horsepower stage 3 tuned 750, which was almost unrideable, when I block shifted to first gear by accident instead of second gear. That was nearly a very big mistake indeed. So there are reasons for block shifting. There are reasons for sequential shifting. The important point in both systems is that you arrive at the right point on the road at the right speed in the right gear. Kevin also says the police system is only one aspect of roadcraft. It is indeed. However, it certainly is a very, very significant underpinning of the way that roadcraft is put into practice on the road. Right. Okay. That, as I say, is it for today. Thank you for your comments. Thanks for looking in. Apologies for the glitch at the beginning of the show. And hopefully we'll see you for the next show, which will be on Sunday. As I said, I'm still canvassing for opinions on whether to shift to a Monday, Thursday format. And I'm still interested to know if you want to shift to from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. So if you've got any thoughts on that, do drop me a line. Right. Thanks for looking in. I'm Kevin Williams. This has been Elevenses, and I will see you on Sunday with the next show. Oh, good Lord. That's the wrong video.